All right, who is ready to paint a jellyfish? Um, if this is not you, then you're in the wrong place because we're going to paint a jellyfish today. This is kind of the last one of this block. I think technically we're going to go around one more, but if you've done all of them, then this one will make a nice little complete square for you, which will be kind of fun, or rectangle, I suppose. But it has been a day. It's been a good day. It's been a long day. It's been a tough day. And personally, I wouldn't mind turning my brain off like a jellyfish, but instead, let's paint one, the next best thing. So I'm gonna scoot these two out of the way just so I don't get them too dirty. But the jellyfish is gonna be a really interesting one to sketch because we're gonna want to do like a lot of kind of wet on wet technique. So let's start by just adding in the light parts. And you've already painted this before, so you're an expert at this point if you've done all of these, so we don't need to worry too much. We're just gonna add in kind of the light sections, and then we're going to add in the rest of the jellyfish. So I'm going to start with a little bit of blue, just right on the edge of this wave. Whatever you're doing, we're going to try to kind of match it to sort of the other paintings that you've done. We're going to kind of build up into it though, because of the jellyfish, we're really going to do all of it at once, which will be interesting. And what I mean by that is because it's going to be wet on wet, or jelly on water in this case. We're just gonna it's gonna be real flowy if we can. It might mess up, so this could also just be a good exercise in patience and trust, and also just having fun. Sometimes it's just fun to push some paint around the paper, and this is such an uncomplex trace. Like you could make that in your sleep. It's kind of low stakes, which is kind of nice. Okay, so there's kind of a loose example there. Now I'm going to trace their mantle. What is this thing called? The the jelly jam jar top. I'm sure there's like some official, but this is going to be done first because this is going to be one of the most solid parts of the jellyfish. You can go any colors you want here. Jellyfish come in every single color on the rainbow, including colors that are not on the rainbow, or at least colors on the rainbow that the human eye can't see. So there's some wild, wild jellyfish. I'm going to do something maybe kind of reddish. I might try a red one, maybe something else. And what I'm going to do is put a little stripe of color. And then I'm going to add a bit of water just to kind of have fun and let it move a little bit. So maybe we'll do a red jellyfish here and maybe kind of a orange one. I'll mix some yellow and some red to get an orange maybe. Maybe an orange jellyfish here, something like that. And oh, I kind of like that color orange. I guess I'll make all of my jellyfish sort of this color. Pink, there's a lot of pink jellyfish out there. It's a lovely color as well. And then here's just some straight water, just going on. Just letting those blooms happen. If you remember all those blooms that we've worked on, this is going to be kind of bloom central. Okay, beautiful. We'll do a couple of different tests there. You can see which one you like. Maybe I'll even add just a touch of purple too, just so you can kind of see what that would happen. But trying to keep it pretty light for the most part. All right. So the jellyfish is going to be a few parts. You've got the mantle, I think. I think this is called the mantle. I really should have looked up jellyfish terminology before here. But we've got the jellyfish part. We've got the little tiny kind of the ribbons here, I guess the sort of body of the jellyfish. And then you got all of these little tiny stringy bits all over the place. And what we're going to be doing is kind of this is all going to be wet on wet. And then when it's a bit drier, we'll paint in those stringy bits. And there's a few things you can use for those. Just put the jellyfish down to dry just a second. There's a few things you can use for those stringy bits. This is one thing I really like. I know I talk ad nauseum about, like a gel pen. You can also use white colored pencil. Those are great. But there are just a ton of things, including mask as well, or really anything you want to kind of pull that little bit of stringiness over it. Brushes are fine too. I've got some really, really thin brushes that I'll sometimes use for those details. And actually, there's even a really, if I can find it, really, really, really tiny thin brushes that have this amazing kind of point on them. Looks like things are messy enough, I might not be able to find it. But there's some really thin brushes that have this kind of like wild looking point on them. It almost looks like a palette knife or something. And that is also great for these really thin lines or a colored pencil. So all of the tools for those thin little lines, but let's get to the jellyfish now. Seeing if that sped things up at all. You can kind of tell when things are a little bit moving. Not nearly. Oh, actually, well, before I get to that too, there's one pretty cool thing that sometimes you can use that makes for a really cool color. If you have uh, if you have it, there's like whole palettes that they're called iridescent. And there's entire companies that make nothing but these like really, really wonderful little, almost like watercolors, little sparkly stuff in them. You can also add stuff like this, which is iridescent medium, and that just kind of gives a little bit of shine and sparkle. But if you wanted to paint some jellyfish, it's a great place to test that, and it'll kind of give a little bit of a shine. Perhaps we'll use some, if you do have a little bottle like this, you basically just shake it up, just add a drop here, and you can kind of add it in. I'll show you what that looks like. So here we have our jellyfish, and you can kind of tell, well, yeah, they're still a little wet, a little bit dry, but basically you just add a drop and then to whatever you're painting and put it on there, and it'll kind of keep that shine and almost look like it's wet the whole time. All right, so you can see that's relatively dry now. Let's dive into the actual jellyfish themselves. Now, looking here, this is kind of what we're looking at. So whatever I paint, kind of I want to line up with that. So I'll use a little bit of light blue, and then I'll probably work into something darker. But the water is going to go on first, and then we're going to add our little mantle here next. And that's okay if it flows and scoots around, because these things are like mostly water. So let's get started with that. Grab a little bit of some water right here. And I'm going to start with, I think I'm actually going to start with a little bit of I'm going to start with the water. So here's a little bit of blue right in here, just to kind of try to match whatever that color I had earlier. But I think I'm actually going to get pretty dark, just because I want those jellyfish to kind of stand out. A little bit of blue right here, followed by just a touch of dark blue. And then I'll work myself into probably some indigo or something like that. But by doing this kind of gradient, lets me make it look really natural. A little bit here, a little bit there. And you can see I'm kind of carving out the little top of the jellyfish. That's why we kind of do it first, just to get it dry, so we can kind of move through them. These also look phenomenal just on their own. Like if you only paint one jellyfish, it also looks really, really, really cool. It's a great thing to use if you want to make like a card, or if you want to do something huge or abstract or small. The beauty of a little thing that is all kinds of shapes and scoots around in all kinds of colors is you can't really go too wrong. Speaking of which, looks like I'm kind of going past my lines and through them, but if you kind of lop the top off a jellyfish, then it just sort of looks like a squashy jellyfish, which they all are anyway. So no stress. All right, now a little bit of water down, kind of working my way to the edges here. I can still go a little bit through it, which is fine, because in just a second, we're going to start adding in some light colors here. If it feels like I'm rushing, it's because I am. I'm kind of trying to beat the time here while it's still wet. So I'm moving through, adding a little bit of my indigo, but I might take just a second to add some of these colors. So a little bit of my purple right there. Okay, so once you're kind of covering just enough of your jellyfish, sorry, let's see, this is, the narration falls off when the mind is concentrated. Once you have been able to kind of cover most of the bases here, we're waiting for this perfect moment where everything is mostly dry, but not quite dry enough. And then we're just going to add a little bit of color. And hopefully, if we do it right, it'll just give this like perfect little finesse. It's like baking or something. It's these almost imperceptible amounts of waiting and patience, and just knowing to hope that you can just barely put it all together. Get a little bit of indigo down here too. Hoping that it all comes together. Okay, right there. All right, that's good enough. Now let's add some jellyfish pieces. It should look a little funny. This looks like a jellyfish out of tentacles. You notice I covered all of them up. So they're little mantly bits, or whatever is below it, the kind of the jellyfish salad. we're gonna make something that's a little bit bright, like a little bit darker than maybe the top of the jellyfish, but not much. So I'm gonna use some maybe red. And I'm just gonna add something in like this. If things are perfectly dry, that's okay too. They jellyfish do have, defined things, but watch this. So now that I'm touching into this section, you can kind of see that it started to flow and move. See that a little bit? This also works with like light stuff too. So say I go yellow. So I'm adding a bunch of yellow to my whatever it's called, red. I told you it's been a long day, so just gotta remember the colors. You could also add something like yellow, and you can put it right here. And what that yellow is going to do is it's going to kind of push out of the way some of these colors. So even though the yellow is so much lighter, it will make these really interesting shapes and shades. Add maybe a bit of yellow into this one too. Or we can kind of mix them together, make like a light orange. Same deal down here. Now, this is going to get all over the place. It's going to get messy, but it's going to be really fun. You'll see. So there we go. We got some shapes and shades all over the place. And maybe I'll even add just a touch of something slightly darker toward kind of the base here, just to give it some definition. There we go, something like that. And okay, now is kind of the moment of truth. But it's weird. It's not like the moment of truth. It's like the moment of waiting for the moment of truth. So we've got all of our little pieces of jellyfish here. Let me show you what this looks like, because I think this is the kind that I'm going to have to go dry here for a second. Also, while I'm thinking of it, just get a little bit of this moving up here just to keep it even. Okay, so we got all this right here. Oh yeah, you can see a little bit of everything going on. It looks weird. It looks like you know, somebody blew their nose like in the ocean or something, but it's okay. It's a jellyfish. It's meant to be kind of strange. And the beauty of doing three of them is like I would say the lower left probably turned out the best. But it's kind of fun because you can kind of do a few that way. And you notice as I tilt it, now it's going the right direction. At least this one is going the right direction. The other one is now going a little bit wild. So that's why you got to kind of get that perfect range. But it's okay because these tentacles are what are going to kind of make everything really come to life. So I'm going to try to dry this really quick and hope that I can kind of lock it in place, because the next piece kind of needs some a little bit of just dryness to be able to work with. Now, while yours is maybe drying, let me go show you how some of these like look on different mediums. Let me grab a piece of something I've painted. It's just the sound of me rattling through stuff. Let's see if I can find something here. Usually I've got some scrap sheets of paper around. Not finding too much. Did I tell you that it's been a day already? Let's see. What am I looking for? A little bit of scrap sheet of paper. This might do. All right, we'll give this a go. This is just something I was kind of testing out. I'm going to do a few different lines on this kind of. It's not super dark, but it should be dark enough to use, unless something else pops up in the next 20 seconds. That's why I always try to keep the sheets of paper that don't turn out well. You'd be surprised. You can always kind of use them for something else. It just looks like I must have recycled them all. What was I thinking? Yep, it's like that. It's like that like one wire that you held on for 10 years and then you threw away. So okay, this will do just fine. So here we have, this is a pencil. I'm just making some little lines right here. Here we have a gel pen. Here we have a colored pencil. This is a mechanical colored pencil. These are pretty cool. You can kind of pick whatever leads you want, but I'm using this white one right now just because I wanted like a real thin kind of line. So here we have a mechanical colored pencil. And then if you need, you can always use a let's say like a Sharpie or something. That's another example. Here's a paint marker. Kind of test this one out. These ones are notoriously bad at staying liquid, or when they are liquid, actually getting that liquid out. There we go, guys. And here is a paint marker. Let's see, trying to get the actual paint part. I don't use a lot of Sharpies on my work, and it shows. There we go. Okay, something like that. And so check out the difference on all of these within this. So you can kind of see, get it right there. So you can kind of see of these, it's on a pretty light thing. The kind of white line of the gel pen is about one of the most defined, but it equals that of sort of almost a pastel is a Holbein colored pencil. It kind of equals that. The mechanical pencil, although they're great on paper, they're not always like a harder lead won't quite show through as much. You kind of want a very soft lead that'll break apart. And I don't know what kind of mess I'm into this Sharpie, but paint marker, basically a no-go. That's kind of my experience is that they can work real well sometimes, but usually they kind of fall apart. So it's kind of fun testing out a little bit. I would suggest using some really dark stuff and just seeing what works for you because we're about to put a lot of little tiny lines on this piece of paper. Okay, and here is the magic. So now it's a little bit more dry. Look at what kind of wildness we have here. So we got a little bit of that kind of crisp line that we added earlier. And we've got this just this cacophony of these little pieces. Absolutely unpredictable. I guess predictable a little bit. Some turned out well. I actually love how this top one turned out, but it's those kind of bizarre little lines that just I feel like they just turn out so well. So let's finish this one up here. I'm gonna give it just a tiny bit longer to dry. In the meantime, I'll add, I believe it's this one. I might be wrong, so check me. But I'm gonna try to match whatever this is to my top little lines. So it looks like a little bit more that dark blue, a little bit to the top, fill it in with water. And then our puffin is what? That's kind of, yeah, some indigo on the edge. And once you have something you like, just kind of make sure it's nice and smooth. And then we're going to add in those lines. Okay, piece by piece by piece by piece. I've always dreamed of doing a massive jellyfish painting. I've been swimming a few times and I've been in the ocean when you really see a big bloom of these jellyfishes coming and it's one thing to see a jellyfish. It's very cool, but there's just something about seeing all of them together. They're like this big pulsing mass and it's so mesmerizing. I always thought it'd be fun to, imagine this on a massive scale, hundreds and hundreds of them, a whole page full where it almost looks like a texture instead of a painting. I always thought that'd be kind of fun. But it's really, even just doing 3 of them is a riot. Okay, so there's a few things we could do here. If you wanted, you could always add just a touch more, something a little bit darker there just to kind of show that they are, very different. You could always put a little bit down by the mantle if you wanted to really differentiate in light. But right now, I think I'm just going to add just these little strings all over the place. And these ones, I'm going to use a gel pen. I'm feeling a gel pen, although maybe I'll use color pencil. I know from testing, they kind of did the same. But I think I'll start with the gel pen here. And I'm going to be adding just a little bit here. If you saw the lines on the trace earlier, you know that they're kind of just ideas. You can really put this wherever you want it. And I'm going to be adding a few down here. I'm loosely following a couple of the lines just to kind of give them a little bit of legs. But I'm going to try not to cut my other jellyfish in half. But they have these long tentacles that really kind of go anywhere and everywhere. Just a little bit right here. And then a couple more down here. I will be adding some darker tentacles too. There are all sorts. I can't remember exactly where they come from. I think they come from this middle part of the body. It's also really fun. You can do some very cool things where maybe just make one of these jellyfish and then add tons and tons and tons and tons of tentacles, like going all the way down. Because sometimes these tentacles be like, 10, 15 feet long, even though the jellyfish is not even close to that. It's like having a really long fishing line, which is what they use them for. So there we go. A couple tentacles here, a couple tentacles there. The white ones really are just these accents. It's almost like, a little bit of fishing line catching the wind or something like that, or, a little bit of, just a little bit of a bit of light. But then you can also add in some really, really, really light ones. I'll probably just use just a brush here, but you can also use a pencil, a Sharpie, maybe stay away from the paint marker. And I'm going to go with something darker here. This is an indigo. And now I can kind of add in these darker lines if I want. Maybe avoiding some of those paint marker lines, but this extra level of lines kind of should bring this element of depth, which could be pretty cool. Maybe one jellyfish is kind of going over the next. Little bits here, little bits there. There we go. Okay. There we go. Has something like that. There you go. And then, of course, if you do want, like I said, you can kind of add a bit more shadow or definition right below, something kind of like this. Add maybe just a touch there, and then you can just put a bit of water, let that gel out. Maybe you did some iridescence in there. You can also add maybe just a touch here by the edge of the mantle. It's going to be darker kind of where it folds over, almost like that little mushroom. So you can put just a bit there if you wanted. And there you go. Something kind of like that. It's simple, it's fun, but overall it creates this really interesting effect. Kind of see this, it's still a little bit wet there. But give it a go. And if you do all three, which one is your favorite, and why? We're thinking about this. It's almost like a tasting platter of animals every time you can do a little triptych like this, especially if it's something so wet on wet. What one worked well, and if you were to do say 100, what one would you try to emulate? But for now, we'll just stick these jellyfish right by our little tiny puffins, letting those all chill out, and we'll be working our way around. But as of right now, I think you should have a pretty cool looking square. And thank you for joining me for a day where I kind of feel like I have the mental capacity of a jellyfish, but really, really, really fun to paint one. Can't wait to see how yours turn out.